Friday, and thank you so much for hanging out with us at our second annual live chicken chat. We are here with a panel of experts to answer your questions, talk about some of the great products that we have in the store, and we just want to have a relaxed and fun night addressing any questions that you might have about your own flock at home. Feel free to chime in, ask a question. We have 2 plush chicks to give away today. You've probably seen them in our stores if you've been in. They're out, super cute, real fun, and we have 2 of these guys to give away that we will draw early next week, a winner out of everybody that asks a question tonight. So go ahead, get those questions coming, and I am going to let our panel of experts take it away and introduce themselves.
I'm Shelly from Nutrena. I've been doing the Coastal Chick Chats for several years, so this is kind of a fun, different event, so bring on the questions.
I'm Darcy Pogue. I'm with Veterinary Service Incorporated, and like Shelly, I've been doing these for quite a few years and enjoy it very much.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being here.
Early digestive health. Also in the kit is Chick Elixir. It's a liquid electrolyte you pour in the cap with a gallon of water. That also helps with their immune system and keeps them eating and drinking. And then Coop Recuperate, you sprinkle on the bedding. That has organic eucalyptus and lemongrass and diatomaceous earth. So you sprinkle and it'll help on the litter with the smell and the ammonia odor. So those are the products in the kit that you can grab when you buy your baby chicks.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, we actually already have our first question rolling in. So I will go ahead and just ask it out, and if one of you wants to step in and answer, that is great. So our first question is from Kent, and Kent asks, how do you get your chickens to lay this time of year?
Laying is all key to lighting. They have to have enough daylight to stimulate egg production. They say at least 13 or preferably around 16 hours of daylight, and you can get that by supplementing with lights, whether it's a light bulb, preferably not a heat lamp this time of year, it's not necessary, but a 25-watt bulb, or in my case, a lot of times I will just use Christmas lights on a timer. And the little white lights come on, don't get the twinkly kind, you want them to be bright and on, and turn them on, usually about 2 to 3 in the morning, let them go off when the daylight happens, but never turn your lights on at night and have them go off, because birds are night blind for the most part, and they will be stuck on the floor of the coop if the lights go off and it's dark outside. So let Mother Nature put them to bed and you wake them up early.
Awesome. Good answer.
Great question.
Awesome. Thank you. We have a second question. My friends and family want organic broilers. Which feed would meet these requirements?
So Nutrena has a feed line called Nature Smart, and it's all organic and natural as well, 100% organic, I should say. We have a chick starter that you can start your chicks out on and then switch them to the, you can actually leave them on that the entire time. I wouldn't even bother switching them to the layer feed, but we have a line of 100% organic feed.
Awesome. Fantastic. Trent, I know you commented you're having a little bit of trouble hearing us, so we will work on getting the audio up for you. Let's see, we have another question here. How many years do chickens lay?
Depends,
right? Depends.
Trick question.
Yeah.
If you do use lighting, then your hens will be a shorter lifespan in the flock as productive. If you let them not lay in the winter, then they will last longer, up to 4 or 5 years, very productively. When you start to add the lights, just like anything, there's a limited number of eggs in a hen, and when she uses those up, if you force her to lay year-round, when they're gone, she doesn't make any more. And so that hen, and usually in commercial flocks, they're done between 2 and 3 years of age. So, but they're pushing those birds really hard and making them lay year-round.
Okay, good answer. Awesome, thank you. Let's see. Looks like we don't have any questions right now, but I do want to have a little chat about something that we get asked pretty regularly. And we have customers that come in all the time, buy chicks maybe in the spring one year, and then return the next spring to purchase their chicks. And they really want to know what's the best way to integrate their new chicks in with their existing flock. So can you give us any tips on that?
Sure.
Maybe since chicks are just now in stores, people might be having that question again.
Well,
Go ahead.
first off, you want to make sure that the birds you're adding to the flock are about the same size, fully feathered, prepared to go out into the elements. You want them to be pretty equal in size, and you want numbers to be fairly equal. There will be beatings. Chickens are very hierarchical, and so they will pick on one another. But if you have multiple bodies going in with multiple bodies, the younger girls are less likely to get beat up on and ganged up on. So the beatings will be distributed equally across the hen drama.
Another trick that Darcy always uses that really works well is getting them a block, which is a scratch block, and it's compressed very hard. So it will give the older chickens something to do, possibly, instead of picking on the younger chickens. They'll pay more attention to that. You can put that out the same day you integrate them, or as you gradually integrate them. That's another thing you should do, is let them see each other and get to know each other before you just throw them all in together. I even was guilty of putting them all in together thinking they'll be fine, and they were not fine at all. So
if you could allow them to see one another for a period of a couple of weeks through either a divided coop or the young birds in a pen of some sort, it helps with the integration process. They will have recognized each other, and then with the block, that gives them something to do besides beat up on one another.
keep them busy.
Chick drama.
Yeah.
Oh, always good to avoid that. We have a question from Kent. What type of dewormer do you use for chickens?
Well, there's a natural wormer out there now that's available, because pretty much all the other wormers that we had, piperazine and so forth, those are off the market. So a company by the name of Duravet makes a natural dewormer. It uses pumpkin seed and some other items that are natural anthelmintics and will actually push the worms through the system and out by changing the pH of the gut. There's also, you can use diatomaceous earth as a feed grade option. Make sure it's feed grade. And that actually has a physical process where it takes the protective layer off the outside of the intestinal worms and allows the digestive juices to actually kill the worm itself. Okay.
Awesome. Perfect. All right. Next question. What do you use to treat scaly legs and feet or parasite invasion in their scales?
You have to smother them if it's a scaly leg mite, and that can be done it's pretty hard to do with sprays like permethrin, but you can try that. But suffocation of them, and really, in all honesty, some good old-fashioned Vaseline along with that application of permethrin will do better. You can't just dust it because the mites get up underneath the scale. So you really have to kind of slather it and smother them.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. And about how often would somebody be looking to do that?
Only when they see evidence of it happening. If you're not seeing your chicken's legs looking red and the scales kind of lifting, probably wouldn't do that. I would treat for mites and lice more regularly, which you can do with the dust. There's poultry dust you guys sell. That's very good. Again, diatomaceous earth for those people that are organic. That's a way to go that's non-chemical. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I know we use a couple different kinds of bedding in our tanks for the chicks in store, and we do have our Flock Fresh out here out front, which is a popular choice. But we do have a question about what your thoughts are on using pellet stove pellets in a brooder.
I don't personally believe I would use the pellet stove pellets just because of some of the fillers that might be in there. The animal bedding pellets are specifically designed, so there's no toxins, no oddball stuff in there, and I would really stick with those. And both of these products work very well. The pellets break down and compost very nicely. The Stan Lee product has an absorbent in it that actually kills the ammonia smell, so either one would work very well, but I would stay away from stove pellets.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Let's see. We have a question here from Chris. Chris will be a first-time chick purchaser this year. What will I need to get started?
Oh, good
question.
That
is a good question. This might be something from everybody that we get an answer from. That is an awesome question.
Oh, yeah, I will let Darcy start.
Okay.
I'll fill in.
Well, you need to make sure that you have great chicks, which come from the store. That's a given. You'll need to keep the chicks warm, fed, and watered, and in dry bedding. So when we start our chicks, when you first bring home day-old chicks, they need to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 95 to 98 degrees. You want to pick up a nice brooder. There are kits here that have complete accessorized kit with the lamp, the brooder, feeders, waterers, and so forth. These kits have been very popular and they're very nice. But an individual purchase would be at least a brooder reflector that has a ceramic base. We are putting a 250-watt light bulb into this, so if you get a cheap version with a plastic base, you run the risk of fire. You always want to make sure that this, when it's suspended in your brooder tank, whether that is a cardboard box, a plastic box, it could be anything. There are brooder kits that are available for sale. But make sure that this does not ever touch the surface of anything flammable, because it gets very hot and it's very scary. If it's in the house, in the barn, you could burn things down. We like to suspend these upward and outward with ties or a metal wire. The wonderful little clamp that's on here, if a dog, a child, or something bumps it, it can actually get up against the surface and cause the fire. In our heat lamps, we do use red heat lamps. That's suggested because it does lower aggression in birds. It hides if there's any picking that goes on, if there's a blood spot, and the red heat lamp masks that and brings the aggression of the birds down more so than a white lamp. Best advice I can give you is Murphy's Law is in effect with chicks. Don't just have one of these at home, have two, because this always burns out Sunday night at 10 o'clock and you can't find another one. And a cold chick becomes a dead chick very quickly. So we start out, like I say, at around 95 to 98 degrees, and for that first week, you can raise or lower your heat lamp to determine if your chicks are warm enough or cold. And the way you see that is very visible. You can use a thermometer to test it, but your chicks, if they're too hot, they will move away from the heat lamp and try and get as far away from the light as possible. If they're too cold, they will pile up under the heat lamp and suffocate sometimes by piling. And if there's a draft coming in the building at all, let's say it's coming from this direction, your birds will be huddled over here because they'll be pushing the heat down on that side. So just watching them is pretty much how you would tell. Size of equipment is very important. Our feeders and waterers need to be chick appropriate in size, because chicks will run right into that little water and get wet. And a wet chick's a cold chick, and a cold chick's a dead chick.
You can start that. Wet chick is cold chick is dead chick.
There we go.
Darcy's favorite saying.
Yeah. And feed is the next most important thing, feed and clean water.
Yeah, so we have a couple options for chicks. Both of our options are going to be in a crumble form, so it's very easy for them to digest. One is a medicated version, and I'll explain about that, and then one is non-medicated. Most of the chicks in the stores are going to be on the medicated version, and we actually recommend that it at least go through a bag of that for several weeks with your chicks. It is actually not an antibiotic, but a lot of people think that that's what's in the medication. But what happens is chickens can contract coccidiosis very easily. It's in their environment. Actually, older chickens even carry it. So it's all around. It's very simple for them to catch it. So what the ingredient in the medicated chick starter does is it doesn't allow that coccidiosis to absorb into their intestines. It stays completely in their digestive system. It never goes into the meat or the eggs or anything like that. But it guarantees that you'll have chicks that actually can grow up to lay eggs or become broilers or that sort of thing. And you know, if you have a preference of not doing that, then we have the non-medicated chick starter as well. Like I said, they're both in crumble form, and you want to make sure that you know, they have free access to that if they're layers. If they're broilers, you probably want to make sure that they're getting their nutrition, allow them to have free access to that during the day, and then take it away at night, because sometimes they will overeat. So that's the only caveat on that, but it's really important for them to have water as well. Some of the water additives that you guys have available, you could talk about.
Yep. The water additive would be great. Keep them getting their electrolytes and their immune system, just establishing that early health. And then the first peep, you just sprinkle right over top of the feed. And it essentially would do the same thing with the essential oils and the prebiotics, just establishing their gut health, getting rid of any bad bacteria that's going through them, those sort of things.
Probiotics and electrolytes are very, very important, and the prebiotics feed the probiotics,
Yep.
so they continue to grow. They're particularly important since we've lost most of our over-the-counter medicines with the veterinary feed directive, and so by introducing products with probiotics and vitamin electrolyte in it, what we're doing with the probiotics is causing what we call competitive exclusion, which means the bad bacteria can't set up shop because the good bacteria are doing what they're doing, and they are taking all the space up and keeping the bad bacteria out. So think of probiotics like we would yogurt, although chickens do not have enzymes to digest yogurt.
Don't feed them your
Don't-
yogurt. Don't do it.
Don't
Even
do
though
the
it's on
yogurt.
Facebook.
Yeah, it's not
not
right.
true.
And then think of your vitamin electrolyte as Gatorade. So it's just very healthy. And these little birds come to us in a somewhat stressed condition because they are hatched. If they're going to be vaccinated, they're vaccinated. Many of them are, the hens are vaccinated and they pass immunity to the baby chick. And then they are picked out, sexed, put into a box, and flown across the U.S. to coastal, where they are then handled and go home with you. So that's a pretty stressful few 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say prebiotics, probiotics, very important. You really can't overdo those sorts of things.
Right.
Awesome. Awesome. Great question for first-time chick owners. Let's see. We have a question about molting. How long does molting last, and how many times a year will my chickens molt?
Oh, well, that's very interesting. Good question. Molting will start not the first season, typically when they're about 18 months old. So typically the second year that you have your chickens, and it goes along with the daylight. So once the daylight starts to fade out, that's typically when they start to molt, and they'll lose a good amount of their feathers and then regrow them. So that's really a good idea. When it starts to get cold out, let's lose all our feathers, right?
Somebody
Mother
made Mother Nature mad.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what she did like that. And chickens are all different. They'll all go through molt a little bit different. Some won't be as bad, some will be really bad. And we don't have an example of it here, but Nutrena has a product called Feather Fixer that we actually developed to help chickens get through molt faster. So it's got higher levels of vitamins, minerals. It actually has a source of greens for the winter time that we have added, and it has some other additives that help them get through that quickly. So it depends on the chicken how long it will take. It depends on what their nutrition is. You really want to make sure that you limit any treats, scratch, anything like that. You want to make sure that your nutrition is very important when they're going through molt. So make sure they have oyster cell. I would switch them completely over to the Feather Fixer. Don't add anything else to it. Make sure they have water and just pray, right? It's not really cold. No, some chickens, and Feather Fixer can be fed year round. So a lot of people do. My own personal chickens are on it year round and they do very well. We don't really notice molt. So it really is nutritionally based for a lot of chickens.
It makes for a very nice product for show chickens as well.
Yes. Yes.
And we actually have a product too. I don't have it up here. It's called Flock Fixer, and it has the prebiotics, essential oils for times of stress and to help get through molting faster. It's a dry powder you just mix right with water, and it comes in a little bit smaller bag than that. That's called Flock Fixer.
Cool. Awesome. Awesome. So a few different options. Let's see. I have a question here about organic feed. Do you guys have any options to buy organic feed by the tote or just by a 40-pound bag at this point?
Nutrena does not. I don't know
Okay.
that Coastal does. They have
I know we have that large livestock feed that we can do bulk by the tote. As far as what we're going to bring in bulk-wise for the chicks, that's something that we can always comment in and address. For those of you that maybe have just tuned in and are just asking questions, make sure you go ahead, write your question in. We'll try to get to all of them. If there's something that maybe we need to double check with, we'll go ahead and answer that later for you. Or if there's a question that we don't get to, we will also go ahead and answer that for you. And everybody that is asking questions tonight are entered to win. We have 2 plush chickens to give away tonight. They're sitting up here, and we'll draw early next week for those when we go through and write down everybody's name that's been commenting. So let's go ahead and get to another question. Let's see. I know you guys probably know the Pacific Northwest has been hammered by some storms, and we have a question about that. Janet says, during this last snowstorm, some of our chickens started eating their eggs. We have 7, all 1 year old. We gave them oyster shell. What else can we do?
You're going to probably want to try and identify the culprit because it's a learned behavior. And once they start, it's oftentimes very hard to get them to stop. There are many things you could try. You could try ceramic eggs. Probably why they did start was they were pent up in a smaller area, and that creates the stimulus for bad behaviors. Right. But once a chicken starts pecking their eggs, they're kind of needing to be culled from the flock. I'm sorry to say, that's hard after.
Try to collect your eggs as quickly as you can, if that's possible. You know, maybe give them a little bit more space to move around. I would try a scratch block. So they had something else to do, something to go pick at rather than their own eggs. But yeah, Darcy's right. Once it starts, it's domino.
It might have been that somebody stepped on an egg and it got started that way. So bed your nest box is very deep as well. So, but yeah, watch and see who the culprit is and be rid of them.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Let's see. We have a question from Trent. Can I put my day-olds on chicken nipples?
Some people will do that. I've seen it done. My preference is usually, and this is just personal preference, let them participate in an open water first and foremost, because when we bring them in, we like to dip their beaks. You want to make sure those birds are well hydrated. Their little bodies are almost 90% water, and if they can't figure out how to use the nipple right away, or if it's too heavy for like the smaller bantam breeds, that would be a real setback. They would not do well. They'd be unthrifty at best and dead at worst case scenario. And within a week or so, as they're getting their activity level up and going, you could try to introduce the nipples, because the color, they're red. Chickens are very visual, and the chicken nipples are red, so they'll be drawn towards pecking at it. And once they start pecking at it, they get drips of water. They figure it out pretty quickly. But I would do, for safety's sake, a secondary measure. Yeah, offer both.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see. We have a question here from Jim. I want to move my 4 laying chickens for several hours to a nearby field to let them graze. I have a small chicken tractor and a covered cage. How can I train them to lay in a new nesting box?
So if you're moving your entire cage, usually your nesting box would be in it. So I'm not quite clear on that question, but like Darcy said, you can get some of those porcelain eggs and put it where you want them to go to lay their eggs in a nesting box, or a golf ball. There's the porcelain egg right there. Actually, that usually works really well. If they're older, they'll usually figure it out. But if you're moving your entire coop, then hopefully your nesting boxes go with it. So maybe you can try to do it that way.
The boxes will have the familiarity.
Or a suggestion. Yeah.
Awesome. Let's see. We have a question here from Chris. What kind of chick should I get if I want egg layers?
Well, there's multiple breeds out there. The sex links and the leghorns are known very much for their production levels. If you want combination type bird, a dual purpose bird that could be for meat or for their docile nature, Australorps, Buff Orpingtons, some of the Wyandottes, the higher functioning, bigger production birds tend to be a little more flighty and a little bit harder to deal with sometimes, especially if you put them into too crowded of a situation. They start to be the ones that are the bullies in the situation. So you may want to go with some of these quieter birds. They all lay really well. Australorps still hold the record. One hen laid 364 eggs in 365 days, so they're no slouches.
I'm a fan of the buffs, I will say, though. They're like the golden retriever of the chicken breed, right? And they are very easy to get along with. They lay really well. Not a huge bird.
They're a great bird for kids. And same with the black Australorps and some of the more unusual breeds, the Jersey Giants, the big breeds. They're just really quiet and docile around children and fun. So
cool.
They're all good layers, though.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see. I know we kind of just talked about size, so we have a question here. What is your recommendation for the amount of space per adult chicken in a coop?
So I think technically it's about 4 square feet per chicken, which is quite a bit if you think about it. But, you know, honestly, the chickens will tell you pretty easily if they don't have enough room. You'll start having chicken fights. You'll start having things like that happen. But yeah, it's 4 square feet per chicken.
And when they get out in free range, I mean, they're all going to sleep together on the roost at night when they come in. So the coop portion is important, but it's the amount of open area that they have to work around and play in and during the day. That's really critical. Really critical.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see. We have a question from Ellen. Can you dry out eggs, then crush them to a powder to feed back to the chicken for calcium?
You can. Okay, no, go ahead. I'll just let Darcy go ahead. This is her favorite question.
It has been done in the past. Let's put it that way. That's a really good way. Even if it's ground into powder, the visual color of the egg still might cause some egg pecking issues. We really don't recommend it. And if you keep feeding the same eggshell back to the bird, they're going to cycle the calcium out of their own body and their shells. So it's much better, in my opinion, to use.
Yeah, we have these handy little bags right here,
options.
the oyster shell, and they're really not going to go through this very quickly. Even if you have a large amount of birds, I would put this out, free choice, in a dish somewhere they can all get to it, and they will use as much as they need of it. It's much more labor intensive to do that, and like Darcy said, can cause problems. So this bag is pretty inexpensive and pretty easy to have available for them.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. I know we've talked a little bit about collecting eggs to avoid that pecking. Is there any process that maybe a first-time chick owner, you know, once their hens are mature enough to start laying, that they should be aware of when it comes to gathering eggs, washing them? Any tips you guys can give us on that?
Yes. I would say gather your eggs as often as you can, twice a day at least. Some people only do once a day, but I like to get them out of there as soon as I can. Keeps them cleaner and you know, from having other issues. Darcy,
There are actually now some nesting boxes that are coming onto the market that are more like a commercial nest box where the egg rolls out into the back where there's a tray. Those are up and coming.
Neat.
Yeah. So that alleviates the worry of the birds pecking the eggs. Certainly, yeah, the bedding is important. Offering them things besides eggs to peck on. I'm a firm believer in frequency is probably one of the best keys of avoiding that problem.
All right. Thank you. And let's see, I just wanted to maybe chat about some of these products that we have up here that our customers can be aware of. I know we have this Chick Boost. We talked a little bit about how helpful it can be for the chicks. When is the best time to use this?
Anytime they're under stress, or anytime at all, honestly. That product's excellent. It's very much along the lines of what you have also.
Probiotics and prebiotics.
Yes, and it's just a matter of what product you opt to use at home. There's no bad time for using an option like that. But during times of stress is really most critical.
And it sounds like you have a lot of other great products for times of stress, even stress and molting, things like that.
Yeah, the flock fixer, And you can use both probiotics and prebiotics. Like Darcy said, the probiotics are the actual good bacteria, and the prebiotics are just a food source for the good bacteria. So, and you can never overdo it. So you could use both. You can use them year round. You can use them in certain times of stress too.
Awesome. We also have some dried mealworms on the table. So maybe we have some first-time chick owners that are wondering when is maybe a good time to introduce those. Can you give us any tips on that?
Right. I typically, recommend that people wait until the chicks are older and they've actually established good eating patterns. I know a lot of people want to give their chickens treats and they think that because they come running, it's good for them. Well, not necessarily. Chickens actually have gizzards, and so they have to grind their feed. So they need to get a little bit bigger and be able to get some grit in their system before they get into some of those treats. But they are fun to give your chickens. I would say wait till they're 12 to 16 weeks before you really want to start anything like that. And like anything, in moderation is always best. Don't overdo anything at all, right?
It's kind of like a toddler. If you give them snacks, they're not going to eat their 3 meals a day.
Right.
So
You'll run into other problems.
And if you give them too much sugar, you're going to regret it.
Yes.
So, yes.
Exactly.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
They are a really handy way to get the chickens back into the coop if you are free ranging.
Yeah.
But yeah, moderation. All
Yeah.
things in moderation.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Great tip. I love that analogy. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Kind of toddler.
We have a question from Karen. Which essential oils can be used with chickens?
So in our products we have organic oregano essential oil. So, and the reason we use the oregano is because it's antimicrobial, oxidant, viral, and fungal properties. So that's why we use the oregano in our products.
And we also have a product that uses oregano. It's predominantly a very good source for making the bird drink more water and keeping the pH in the gut balanced so that bad bacteria don't get in and set up shop, kind of like the competitive exclusion idea.
Right.
So those are that, and I think I've seen rosemary oil and some other products. You don't want to use something like a cedar oil or anything that's an essential external type product. But certainly anything that's labeled with rosemary or oregano.
Yeah, and we use the lemongrass and eucalyptus too in the Coop Recuperate for the smell.
Awesome. Fantastic. Back to the mealworms real quick. We do have a question. My chickens didn't like the mealworms because they were too dry and brittle. Does the kind of drying process devoid them of being healthy?
Well, it probably does wipe out some essential nutrients that are in those. They're more of a treat, so if your bird doesn't like them, pick something else because there's a ton of different types of treats out there. And chickens, like I say, they're very visual, so they're attracted to things that look different than what they're used to eating, which is their regular diet. And that's why they make such good little foragers when they're out rooting around and looking for bugs and everything. But if your birds are not liking them, try a seed product or something else. Treats for chickens, one of those items. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Let's talk about if somebody is bringing their chicks home in one of these great little boxes. Is there anything that they need to do ahead of time to maybe get their coop area set up? Do these heat lamps need to be turned on ahead of time? If so, how far in advance to get that temperature? What's kind of the process on that, since we have a lot of first-time chick owners watching?
Yeah, sure. Like Darcy talked about, you want to make sure that the temperature is what's going to rule how early you set it up. In our really cold temperatures right now, you might have to do it the day before, but you want to make sure, I think we had a thermometer up here, you can actually measure how warm it is in your brooder, and that's going to be really what dictates how soon you need to set it up. So if it's really cold outside and you're doing it in a barn, then you might need to worry about that a little bit more. But yeah, you need to make sure that you have that ready before you walk in with this little box going beep, beep, because really, we don't want them in here very long. This is just to get them home and get them happy quickly.
And the heat on the bedding also is critical because it needs, I like to set my stuff up 24 hours ahead of time. That way I know everything's working. I can adjust the temperature by raising and lowering the heat lamp and use that thermometer at chick level, not up halfway up the side of the pen. Keep it where the chick's going to be, and then adjust the height of your heat lamp accordingly. And it also allows the water time to warm up a little bit, so it's not frigid when the birds arrive and you just get it out of the tap. And pretty much that.
Darcy also mentioned that I know that Coastal does that when the chicks when they actually physically come to the store, they will dip their beaks in the water. That's not a terrible idea to do when you get home either, so they know first of all where the water is. You make sure that they start to drink. That's really important. You want to make sure that they have access to fresh, clean water all the time and that they know where it is, they're getting to it, and make sure that you have enough space, enough waters for each chicken.
Awesome.
So it's 25 birds per gallon.
Yep.
So if you do one of those gallons, if you have 50 chickens, you need 2 of those at least.
2 of those.
Yeah. Yep.
And you guys mentioned that these are kind of the perfect size for these first-time chicks. that are little, just
Yeah.
coming home. This is
Yeah.
the perfect size for them.
The depth on these is very important. So if you have small birds, like bantams, like I go back to those because they're very popular nowadays, you may want to put some marbles or pebbles in here so that when they run in, they only get their little ankles wet. They don't get their whole body wet. Because a cold chick is
a wet chick. She doesn't even know her.
Cold chick
Wet chick is a cold chick. A cold chick is a dead chick.
So size is important.
Okay, awesome. So we have these sizes in the waters and the feeders.
Yes,
so
correct.
you guys can definitely, for you first-time chick owners, if you're going to your local store, getting your whole setup put together, you can definitely go ahead and find these. So we'll get you all set. We do have a question here. How can a person tell what the sex of the chicks are?
Well, when you go to the store, look for the bins labeled Pellet, because those have been sexed.
Yeah.
If they're a straight run bird, you have a 50-50 chance every bird you touch. Now, that being said, there's about a 90% to 95% accuracy in sexing chicks coming from the hatchery. So you could still get a rooster even though it's in a tank full of pullets. You will probably not know you have a rooster until they start to act like a rooster, which is several weeks down the road, unfortunately, by the time you've become attached to it. But a lot of times folks will, one of the first things they will notice is the
crow,
crow, the other, no! Or the attempt to crow, which usually sounds
That's the other one.
bad.
Did you see who made the noise?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then as the birds mature, their combs are different. Roosters generally have hackles, but there are some other breeds of chickens that have them in hens as well. But mostly you'd see that after you hear the crow.
After.
And another thing I should mention, when they do get baby chicks or first time, make sure you check with your city ordinance to make sure how many chicks you can have. Some you can't have a rooster. It just depends on where you live.
Yep, most of them within city limits you can't have a rooster.
Awesome. Good tip there, for sure.
Very good.
For sure. Let's see. We have something here. When outside, I gradually lost all of my Banty chickens. The larger chickens, it seems, are more hawk resistant. Is there anything that you guys can suggest maybe to prevent that a little bit?
Yeah, you definitely have to worry about your predators in the area that you're at. If you have a lot of hawks, I would recommend chicken wire over the top of the area that they're free ranging in. I have a completely enclosed coop. It makes, or not enclosed, but covered, and it makes it so that they can go outside, but I don't have to worry about hawks, because we do have eagles, hawks, that sort of thing. It also kind of helps with some of the raccoons. I caught a raccoon standing on top of my chicken coop looking in. So you definitely have to worry about predators. Chicken tastes good, right? So animals figure that out very easily, and then they find out that there's a buffet at your house and they won't stop until they're all gone, unfortunately. So yeah, you can do several different things, maybe even a roof, and then just have mesh sides or something. But yeah, it's a little sad, a little bit difficult, but it definitely does happen.
That's for sure.
All right. Let's see. One other question here from Kent. Can you give chickens alfalfa to peck through?
It's not going to hurt them, not at all. It's a little bit expensive, but yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, that kind of rolls us into maybe talking about feed a little bit.
Sure.
When they're bringing their chicks home and starting them out on something, what would you recommend?
Yeah.
Just since we do have so many first-timers here.
Sure.
And for those that maybe already have an existing flock,
Right.
eating something
Right.
else for their birds, when's a
Yeah.
good time to transition all that?
Yeah, so your chicks, you're going to start out on the chick starter, either like I said, the medicated or the regular, and you want to leave them on that for at least 16 weeks or until you find the first egg. And then you can switch them to one of the layer feeds that we have, whether it be the organic, the country companion, the nature wise. They all have a little bit different functionality, but you want to make sure that they're on that chick starter enough of the time until they get to the point that they're ready to lay, because it's going to have a little bit higher protein, a little bit less calcium. Once they start laying, they need a higher level of calcium. So we also recommend that you always have oyster shell out available, because you can't look at a chicken and say, hey, she needs more calcium today, right? But she's laying that egg and it's 85% calcium, so it draws on their system quite a bit. But the rule of thumb is about 16 weeks, and that's when you should start to expect eggs. Once you do that, it also becomes a preference. Most of the chick starters are in a crumble form. Once you get to the layer feed, there is either a pellet option or a crumble option. And a lot of people have a preference. Chickens will tend to waste the crumble a little bit more. People think, well, they're not eating it or they're eating more, but sometimes they just peck through it and pull it out of the feeder a little bit easier. Is why we also go to the pellet. It's the exact same thing. People will say, my chickens didn't like the pellets. Well, it's the same thing as the crumble. So they might not, but they're kind of fooling you. So yeah, we've got several different options once they get to the layer stage. Like we've talked about, the prebiotics and probiotics, a whole bunch. The nature-wise feeds are going to have the highest levels of that in it. The Nature Smart also has prebiotics and probiotics. We also have what's called Flock Shield in both of these products, and that's just another form of immune support and a way to help get those chickens to be healthy, dietary exclusion, so that the bad bacteria can't get in there. And it's a yeast culture that they've developed that really helps with the immune support and helps them to utilize their feed better. So we really want them to be healthy and utilize as much as they can without breaking the bank, right, so to say. But there's definitely several different options you can go with. The organic is the Nature Smart, like I said, the Nature Wise, and then Coastal has the Country Companion, which is a very good product as well.
Awesome, thank you.
Sure.
Good information there. Let's see. Ellen asked if we have a date when our chicks come in. Ellen, I will let you know that chicks have arrived in stores. We typically get shipments every week. Shipments can kind of vary sometimes just based on the postal service, the weather, the hatching rate, where we get our chicks. So if there's something specific that you are looking for, you're more than welcome to go ahead, call your local store, make sure that they have what you need before you go in there. So hopefully that answers your question. We have another question from Kent about feeders, and he was curious what feeders that he could possibly get that are rat and mouse proof. Is there such a thing?
There is one out on the market. We're not as a company affiliated with it, but it's one that it's called a treadle feeder, and you guys do have them in the store, I believe. And where the bird steps on this little paddle, and it opens a door, and they can peck the feed out of it, and then when they step off, the little door slides shut, and mice and rats can't get into the feeder. So it's a very nice product. That's about the only thing that I can think of to keep rats and mice out of the chicken feed.
Awesome.
The rest of them are all open.
Yeah.
Open welcome committees.
Yes, they are. A buffet. Awesome. Let's see. We have a question here about the ingredients of the organic crumble and chicken scratch. Is that loaded with any GMO, anything that isn't necessarily the healthiest for the bird?
So when you're going to the organic line, the Nature Smart, it's all non-GMO product. What was her other question? If you're going with organic, if you're going with the regular feeds, they can have quote unquote GMO products in them. Yeah, so if you're concerned with that, I would go to one of the organic. The Nature Smart is all non-GMO certified.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. Let's see. We're kind of slowing down. What do you suggest to do when a hen gets broody? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
That's
awesome.
correct.
That
and
is
it
correct.
happens.
It
yes.
does.
Right.
Yeah. Your high production layers generally aren't going to be those birds that do tend to get broody. The ones we tend to like do.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard to convince them to knock it off. You can try excluding them from the nest box, which might also exclude the other birds from the nest box. You could try pinning the bird up and moving her away for a few days and then let her loose. Some of them are darn near impossible to convince that they don't want to be broody. If you can find somewhere to move her off in a corner and put a golf ball or a ceramic egg or something underneath of her to keep her distracted, so she doesn't keep stealing eggs out of the other hens' nest box, because they all like to lay in one or two areas. And those hens will just keep scooping them over and under her.
So just keep pushing her out and taking the eggs, push her out, take the eggs. She might get tired. Every time I would push mine out, she'd run to the food and water and then get back in. So it happens, unfortunately.
Those ceramic eggs are a cure-all for an awful lot of things.
Sounds like it, for sure. For sure. Well, we have a few more minutes to take a couple more questions. If you guys have any other questions, you can go ahead and write them in now. If there's something that we didn't get to or maybe didn't answer fully for you, we will go ahead and comment on this video all of the answers for you. While we wait for any last minute questions, do you guys have any tips to share? Maybe that we didn't get asked that you think is really important for a chick owner?
I do. I have something. This is my soapbox moment.
I love it.
Go ahead.
These guys sell an egg cleanser, which 2 capfuls in a gallon of warm water. I'm kind of picky about my eggs being washed. I do not feel that I'm raising farm fresh eggs to have them stay on the shelf for a number of days, so I'm not afraid of washing the bloom off. And the bloom is simply a film barrier that goes on the outside of the egg when the hen last lays it. And I'm one of those people that I would not necessarily take a sandwich and walk down to my chicken coop and to collect the eggs, set my sandwich down in the nest box and collect the eggs and then pick that sandwich back up and eat it. There's always somebody in a group that says, I'd do it. I'm not that person.
Farm people, it happens, right?
You don't see, smell, or taste the bacteria, but you can be darn sure it's probably there, either from a wild bird, a rodent, the chicken stepped in something on the way to go lay the egg in the nest box. So it's probably got bacteria on it. And if you're going to put your eggs into the refrigerator, there's 2 things the refrigerator does. It chills the egg, and it's got a fan that circulates air. So if you put a dirty egg in your refrigerator, guess what circulates around in there? The bacteria. So I'm a big fan of washing my eggs. It's critical that you do it in water that is warmer than the temperature of the egg itself. In commercial purposes, they do 160 degrees, I believe is about the approximate temperature that they use. So hot water, cool egg, wash it, let it dry, put it in the container, refrigerate it, and they'll last for a long, long time. So that's my soapbox.
I love it.
We let you have your minute.
Okay.
It's fine.
Anything from you? Any last minute little tidbits to add?
No, I think chickens are a lot of fun to raise. That, they seem a little bit daunting when you start, but they're really very simple animals to take care of. There's a lot of products that make your life easier. You set the feed out, you set the water out, and, if you have the right environment, they're really fun to raise and have fresh eggs. They get to be, like pets. All of my chickens are named. So I'm not ashamed to say that, but they're a fun animal to add to any backyard that allows it, really, I think. And I think a lot more people would enjoy raising chickens if they knew they weren't so scary, right? They're a lot of fun. It's the first time you get that first egg, it's at our house it was happy dance. So
it's a thrill.
Yes, it is. It is. So and then on these days when you can't get to the store because there's so much snow, you have breakfast outside, right?
That is true.
It's happened. So there are a lot
true.
of bonuses to raising chickens. So
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Any last bits from you?
I would just add, we have a awesome website and social media. We have a blogger that we work with, and her name's Annie, and she does super fun and funny videos. She names all her chickens, and she does these hilarious videos and very informational videos too on how to set up your brooder and stuff. So you can check out our website and all our social media. It's getstronganimals.com, and you can find all Annie's blog posts, all of her videos, and those sorts of things, which are really helpful, I think.
Cool. That's awesome. That's great.
I would also add that, if you have a question, come in and ask Coastal. They raise chickens every year. They have chicks, months out of the year. The people that are in these stores are very knowledgeable. And if they don't have the answer to the question, they will find it for you. They'll get a hold of one of us or figure out the answer for you. So that's a really good resource. Rely on them. They're very good and very knowledgeable about that sort of thing. So.
Perfect. All right, we have a few last minute questions that came in. One is, what do you use to clean the feeders and waterers so that it's safe for the chickens? Anything specific that they should be doing?
You can use a 10% bleach solution. Bleach is pretty good at killing darn near everything, but
Just
let
make
them
sure you
soak-
rinse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
rinse them really well. You could actually, in some instances, use a spray like Vetricin to spray on the product itself, and then rinse it also, because it is a very good antiviral, antibacteria product that we use as a treatment for on-bird activity. But again, rinse everything really well. And even if you cleaned up and put your products away last year, if you're recycling feeders and waters, clean them up before you use them the next year always, because again, you never know what creepy crawly thing ran over it and put some bacteria on it. So
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see. Here is a question about the eggs. Why do eggs sometimes come out without a shell, just the membrane holding the contents in?
misfire.
Yeah. In the beginning, yeah. If it happens later, when they first start to lay, you're going to have some that are a little wonky, maybe smaller than they're going to be when they are really producing well. If that happens after they've been laying consistently, you might want to look at your nutrition, make sure that they have enough calcium that you're using. I would recommend one of the commercial feeds there formulated for laying chickens. Barring that, if you're feeding a really good high quality feed, make sure you have oyster shell out. Like I said, you can't look at a chicken and go, oh, she needs more calcium today, but she knows. So she will try to find it in her environment. So it's either when they first start laying, it's not that big of a deal. When they stop laying or getting to the end, sometimes they'll have some weird things happen as well. But if it's in the middle of their laying career, I like to say, check your nutrition and make sure that there's nothing missing there. And water is very important, especially in the summertime when it gets really hot. If you can cool down their water, chickens don't really like any animal, don't like to drink hot water. So that's something else that's really important. And make sure that they have, I leave food and water available 100% of the time. So make sure they can have free reign, free access to that.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Well, it looks like our last question is from Chris. Chris was one of our first-time chick watchers. And the question is, will you come over and help me get started? And all I'm going to say about that is I wish we could, but you can come into your local store and help yourself get started in a really special way. We've teamed up with Nutrena, and we will be giving out a limited number of these scratch and win cards at every store location on Saturday, March 23rd. So make sure you swing on in, check the flyers that are coming up with all the details. You'll see info posted on social media. If you're looking at a flyer on our website, information will be there. It will be in the print copies, and it will also be on Flip. If you're checking out the flyers on Flip, you can find out more information. We have a loaded chick day for you with tons of fun, chance to win tons of prizes. You can win chicks, you can win feed, you can get discounts, just everything that you might possibly need to get started. So unfortunately, we can't come to you to help you out, but we do have a really fun day planned for everybody who is looking at getting chicks this year or who already has a flock. So make sure you swing on in. Again, March 23rd. You can find out all the details on our social media. So with that, I want to thank you guys so much for being here. I know I always learn so much when we do these fun little chats. There's always something new. Getting questions in is just, it's always fun to see what our customers want to learn about. So thank you. And again, welcome to the Coastal family. We are so happy that you are here. It's really fun doing these as a live broadcast instead of in the stores, because we can really reach so many different areas just in one night with awesome, great questions that everybody gets to hear. So I love it when we get to do this. So to everybody that asked questions, thank you so much. You will be entered to win one of the 2 plush chicks that we have. They are so fun, so adorable. I love them. They are awesome. So we will go ahead and draw for that next week and contact you. If for some reason we did not get to your question tonight or didn't answer it fully, we will go back through and make sure everything is addressed so you guys won't be left hanging. So Thank you so much for hanging out with us and spending your Friday evening with all of us here. And make sure you swing into your local store and check out the chicks.